Hey sales hackers, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to sign up for the upcoming Sales Stack conference and Sales Hacker workshops near you. Now, on to your selected webinar.
I'm Max Altschuler, CEO of SalesHacker.com, and the upcoming Sales Stack 2015 conference in San Francisco on November 10th. Today we have Jaime Muirhead, VP of Sales at Ringlead. We got Phill Keene, Director of Sales at TinderBox, and we got Liz Cain, VP of Director of Worldwide Business Development at NetSuite, which is the lead generation role, right? You guys have the same title.
I like the promotion to VP though.
You like the promotion to VP. You're getting there. It's that WW that throws me off on LinkedIn.
Every time.
You just immediately click to VP. So Liz, why don't you tell us a little bit more about kind of who you're selling to, team size, the company, and then we'll go Jaime and Phill, and then we'll get started.
Sure. So I guess first, Max, thanks for having me today. A little bit about my background. I'm the Senior Director of Global Business Development. I'll lose the worldwide. I run the lead gen team and pre-sales training for NetSuite. I've been here for about 7 years in various capacities, including sales operations, account management, and then about 3.5 years ago, I made the transition away from a quota-bearing team and started NetSuite's first lead gen group. So we own all inbound lead qualification, outbound prospecting. And we're growing our team right now, so I'm going to be at about 150 people next month. So we've gotten pretty big pretty fast. As far as the market we sell to, we're selling business management software, so anything from front-end CRM to ERP and e-commerce. We can sell really to any market. At our core, we're a financials company, and it turns out every industry needs that. So we're selling to a pretty diverse market.
Awesome. Jaime.
Yeah, so I'm Jaime Muirhead. I'm the SVP Sales here at Ringlead. It's really been interesting because I evolved out of an AE role. I was really the third sales rep at Ringlead, and just evolving as a company. Back in 2011, 2012, we were a really lean, small company. We didn't even have a customer success department. So we've kind of been on the evolution and front lines, and just evolving into the sales development role, and management has just been really interesting, keeping up with best practices, especially being a data quality provider, providing a technology for sales development reps and that sort of thing. So traditionally, Ringlead was a duplicate solution for Salesforce.com. So we were selling really only to Salesforce companies, companies that had Salesforce, but we've evolved out of Salesforce to sell also to marketing automation, and then with some of our enrichment technology, it doesn't have to be Salesforce at all. So we work with Oracle and some other companies as well. So our team size is around 15 reps. We have 5 inbound and outbound SDRs. And the territories are broken down into West Coast and East Coast teams.
Excellent.
Awesome. And I'm Phill Keene. I run the lead generation and demand generation efforts here at TinderBox. I have a team of about 8 BDRs right now. Who we sell to, our core customer, is mid-market to enterprise, really tech companies, business service companies, faculty service companies, anybody that uses documents in their sales process. So anybody that sells anything with a contract is kind of our core customer. And our focus is really people that have sales technology in place and allow them to use the information they already have to build out a very templatized sales document, like a proposal or a contract or a presentation for that matter. So,
cool. Yeah, and thanks a lot for the context, because it's really important for people who are listening to understand, in the answers that we're providing throughout this webinar, based on how your team is broken up or how many reps you have under you, maybe it might be more beneficial or more relevant to somebody who's listening that's, closer to the 10 rep team like Phill, or, closer to the 150 rep team like Liz. So thanks for the context, guys. We're going to jump right into it, and we'll start with you, Liz. So when you're collecting data on net new prospects, what are some of the most important things to look for and collect? And how many contacts per account are you looking for? I mean, what does it depend on for you when you're going out and collecting data on net new prospects?
Yeah, so I'd almost separate that into two categories for us. I think we have both the inbound leads that our marketing team is generating and then our outbound prospects, and we do treat them a little bit differently. On the marketing side, every inbound lead is going to be followed up on for us, but we're looking for that sweet spot. And if we find a lead that's truly in our target market, we're going after it a bit more aggressively, and we're looking for more data on that account. So from the top, I would say at a minimum, we want 3 contacts per account. And the fact that we're selling across all these different departments and this different functionality, it is really important that early on we're building relationships and rapport throughout the company and not with one key influencer or champion. So I'd say 3 is a minimum for us, and we really want them to be, proactively touching multiple contacts in an account continuously. On the outbound side, I think that probably gets taken to an extreme, right? Upwards of 5 contacts is pretty regular for us, but it will depend on the size of the company, right? If we're going after a 12-person distribution company, you're probably not calling 5 people that are all sitting in a room together versus if we're calling on a 10,000-person software company. So it does look a little bit different for us.
Yep.
As far as where we're getting that information, I've got a team of 150 people who research all day long, and these guys are probably our #1 source of data. They're looking at Google, they're looking at news alerts, they're looking at company websites, they're using, a couple other pieces of technology we have in place, looking at something like a LeadSpace or a Hoovers, and, gathering information manually for the most part.
Okay, great. And so you have them all looking up, this information. Do you have like an ideal customer profile that you've created? So they look at these contacts. They want 5 contacts from maybe a Fortune 500 company. How do you figure out which 5 people?
Yeah, absolutely. It varies for us based on the industry we're selling to, so that sweet spot can vary. So if we're selling to a consulting services firm versus a Fortune 100 company versus a small software startup, that will look a little bit different. Generally, we're selling into the finance and IT offices, though, and looking for VP level and higher. And, that scope of responsibility changes depending on the size of the company. So in a smaller company, the controller might have more to do with a purchase than at a really large company where they've delegated down to a VP level. I think it does change a bit for us.
Cool. And yeah, so you're selling into so many different, verticals that it's switching around for you a lot more than maybe some of the smaller companies that aren't there yet with their product suite and their product offering. Jaime, what about you? What are you, like when you're collecting data on net new prospects, what are you looking for? What are you collecting?
Yeah, so sort of like Liz, we've definitely adopted kind of the sphere of influence model where we want to really understand who all of the targets are. So that's potentially persona-based for different technologies. So depending on source, what application that they're interested in, we then go after those specific personas. So we have a really good Marketo integration. So if someone comes in, we know that they have Marketo, we're going to go after the director of demand gen, potentially drip content to the CMO, that sort of thing. Definitely, in terms of collecting information, we want that firmographic data. So we actually have a technology that we utilize internally that offers, it appends firmographic data like revenue, employee size. That helps us segment the leads, obviously, to our team. And then as soon as a new lead gets into the system, we leverage our technology profiler to automatically create specific titles in the organization, so we can kind of build out that org chart and empower the sales team to potentially reach out right away. And that sort of thing.
And how did you identify what your maybe ideal customer profile looked like?
Yeah, so the first thing that we had to do is, luckily with Ringlead we have around 1,000 customers, so we appended all of the firmographic data to our database and then realized, what we were winning, who we were retaining, and what titles we had, and what our interaction with them looked like, to really determine and define who the persona and the target buyer is. So there's a lot of kind of analytics into the existing database. Luckily, we had a lot of customers too. It's a little bit harder if you're starting off with a startup. You don't really know who you've seen success with, but with us, we really could dig into the analytics of our success.
Definitely. Phill?
Yeah. So other than that, the tip of the spear type of approach is what we go after as well. So finding the person that we can get in the door with, find the champion, find an influencer, and work up. At the same time, calling high and let gravity work its way back down. So calling in the CFO, the CMO, or the CRO level and pulling it back down to drive initiative. but things we'll do too is look for like Indeed.com job listings and say, I'm looking for a Salesforce admin. Great, so we know they use Salesforce, or I'm looking for a CRM analyst. So we know they have some kind of sales technology in place, and then we call against that and say, we know your Salesforce users. Here's what other companies that use Salesforce have done with TinderBox. Or same thing, if hey, use NetSuite or you use Dynamics, same thing happens. We call against it with a little bit of knowledge behind it. And other than that, we watch blogs, we watch Twitter, we watch LinkedIn, and we say, hey, we love this post that you wrote. This is why you should be working with us. You have a tremendous amount of growth. We've helped other companies grow by doing X, and then working with them that way. So it's finding that data that's very specific to them, doing a little bit of research. So that way when I'm calling into the CRO or the CFO, I'm not calling in and saying this generic pitch. I'm calling in very specifically saying, I solve these problems for you, and this is what I want to help you with. So.
It's good that you can leverage the fact that you're complementary to a lot of these bigger companies as well and not competitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that process. And so then again, the data's out there. How do you make sure that it's high quality? How do you make sure you're getting, the right information? I know you're using certain, lead sources. Maybe you use data.com or whatnot. I think you had mentioned before when we got on the webinar. But is there anything you're doing to clean that? Is there anything you're doing to test that before you start sending off, messages or, even trying to make phone calls?
Yeah, so currently we use SalesLoft in our stack for being able to pull in leads into Salesforce. We do check them and clean them up with Ringlead right now for anything from webinars or events that come in. So we're making sure what we put in is not duplicate records, because that ends up happening quite a bit. You end up having, I don't know, I think it's like 20% of your database ends up being duplicate records or bad records after a certain amount of time. So we keep what goes in the system, make sure it's clean, and then what actually happens after it gets to the system. We have another system, we have data.com, like you mentioned, that goes through and cleans up firmographic data, gives us direct clients, ensures the email address is correct, fills in things like SIC code, industry type, all of that information as well, so then we can run reports against it. So that's really where it's not just putting good data in the system, but once it gets to the system, making sure it's clean again, and then also refreshing it on a regular basis, because data gets old very fast. So.
Yeah. And Liz, you're doing something similar, I'm guessing, to clean up the data, right?
Yes, we've got a couple of things. I think, so we're about a 4,000 person company now, and from a database standpoint, there's a lot of leads in there, right? We've been around for a while, and we have other channels we're selling through too. We have partners entering leads. We have our international teams entering leads. We've got North America. So suddenly we've got this duplicate problem that isn't even just, it's not even something that needs to be cleaned up. It's truly a rules of engagement question now. I could have 3 different leads in there that we're tackling at once. That's something that we're managing through people, actually. So we have a lot of people actually dedicated to reviewing what's in our database and making sure that we're following our own rules of engagement that we put in place. You mentioned the firmographic side of things, and we're certainly augmenting a lot of the data that comes in as we're piloting new short forms and new ways to get leads. We're specifically using ReachForce to do a lot of the data augmentation, and that allows us to route more effectively and to confirm data. And I don't know that I'll bring it up because I find it kind of interesting, but some of our worst data is actually from self-select on our website. And so we'll find that if I have a VP of services at a software company fill out a form, he'll enter the number of employees that work for him and call himself a services company because he's part of that organization versus the broader company. And so we do need to validate kind of everything that comes in, not just imports or leads we pull. It's stuff that is actually coming to us proactively too.
Awesome. And Jaime, obviously you guys have quite a few solutions in this space. So I'm assuming you're eating your own dog food right now. What are you guys doing? I guess what's your
drinking our own champagne.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, we have competitive products to Data.com and SalesLoft, so it's very similar in that we have our outbound team uses our technology called Capture to go out and build lists, our target buyers, get them into the system. And then we have Profiler, which can append firmographic data as well as create new leads and contacts into Salesforce.
So your stack is all in-house pretty much?
Everything we use really is our own, yeah.
Okay. And Phill, your stack is kind of scattered through a couple different ones, right? So your data.com, SalesLoft.
Yep. Data.com, SalesLoft, Ringlead. We use Pardot for lead distribution. And then we actually have a company called SalesView for lead management as well once it gets to the system.
And Liz, I'm not sure how much you can get into on the product side of things, but is there anything you can tell us about your stack?
Yeah, I mean, a few tools. Obviously, we're using a different CRM. I think that's probably the biggest thing to call out. We use NetSuite. We're drinking our own champagne too, right?
Yes.
Beyond that, we're using ReachForce. We use LeadFormix and LeadSpace to augment some data as well. And some other tools that we're starting to look at and pilot are actually more around the predictive analytics side of things. And potentially some of those will be used to augment data in the future as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, which leads in interestingly to the next real question here. We can start with you first, Jamie, on this one. But so once you have the data, what can you find out there that kind of takes it to the next level? So you have all the right information on who you want to reach out to. What helps you get details on that individual? Maybe enrich that data or find things that are certain triggers or right time, right person, right buyer, everything. What are you using to kind of take that to the next step and find out things that help you reach out that aren't as easily uncovered?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we have a few products that are specific to certain triggers, right? So events is an obvious one. So we have a list import tool that is used to prevent duplicates. I know TinderBox is using that. So that can help with routing leads and preventing duplicates, as well as you can use it in conjunction with capture to actually append information. So events are a huge aspect of our triggers. So obviously after a Marketo Summit, all of those vendors were there. They have a list. They're going to have to get it into the system. So events is actually a kind of a trigger-based event for us.
Does that perform?
So, and then as far as, yeah, go ahead.
Does that perform best for you? So like finding someone from an event or like meeting someone at an event and following up, is that one of the best kind of?
Well, it even digs into, you can identify who's going to be at specific trade show events. So certainly us following up and being responsive to our own booth attendees and that sort of thing, certainly. But it's something that you can identify. So it's an addressable market in that that those people are going to have data that they need to clean, that they need to augment, that they need to get into the system. And so you can leverage understanding that timing to potentially say, hey, you're investing $100,000 in Salesforce, you're going to get or in Dreamforce, you're going to get thousands of leads. Let's make sure we get Ringlead in place before that so you can optimize and secure that investment. Because, again, if you're creating all those duplicates, and so a really good kind of anecdote was Marketo Summit for us. We were obviously an attendee there, and I think we got around 1,000 leads from that. They literally only gave us first name, last name, email address, and company. Nothing else. Not phone number, not title, not firmographics, or anything like that. So we actually leveraged our technology to append the information, get phone numbers, make it actionable, then get it into the system, and then put those leads into our outbound dialer, automatic dialer campaigns, and things like that. Yeah.
It's really interesting that you're finding people who are. It's a good approach. It's a great approach. Finding people who are going to be, that they're going to be getting leads because they're expoing or sponsoring at these big events. So that works really well for you. Phill, anything that you're doing once you have this data, what's the next step for you? What are you doing that you can go out and find kind of this next level information?
So I think one of the biggest parts is kind of pulling all the data together. So not just seeing that they went to an event, but also seeing that, hey, they attended the Sales Hacker webinar that we're on. They attended a webinar that we're doing next week or the one week before, and watching that. Now they're starting to engage with us differently. They've been to an event, they've seen us, they've met us face to face, they've been to webinars, they're starting to read our blogs, they're starting to download our white papers. So it's getting them from those kind of top of the funnel approach of just getting them to interact with us to getting to the part where they get down the middle of the funnel of, all right, it's time to see a demo request. So watching that data, kind of collecting all of that and seeing what their behaviors have been so far, and then hopefully replicating it with companies that you find are your core customers. So if I'm selling specifically to a big SaaS company that we can do business with, well, I got to see, all right, so when I first sold with them, what was the first thing that happened with them? Let's tune that dial up a little bit and say, let's go back to that event and let's go see if we can do, let's replicate that. Let's do that 3 or 4 times again. And I think that's understanding their journey, becoming just a prospect, and then after they become a prospect, hopefully a client, and then reducing churn in the back end because you know you're getting good customers in from the start. So
Cool. Cool. And Liz, I mean, you did a fantastic presentation at the New York Sales Hacker Conference in April, pretty much on this topic. So I know you got some good input on this. What do you do to take it to the next level after you have all this information, and what's that kind of that reach out strategy that you do that leverages kind of all the data that's available to you on the internet?
We're all about the triggers here. I think the biggest thing that I find is a holdup for some of my new reps trying to find the exact right trigger. And one of the things we're trying to teach is kind of anything can become a hook. So you need to do some research and you need to go in with a relevant message, but it doesn't need to be perfect, right? You need to show that you've done a little bit and have an opening into the company, but you can create a hook out of almost any piece of information you can find. So we're asking them to set up alerts to track companies on LinkedIn through Google. Pick a couple of sources. I don't really care what they are, but be watching your top 50 or 100 accounts really proactively. And then also looking for those opportunities to find great hooks into other companies. So whether it's monitoring, tech blogs or industry blogs, it might be outside of your immediate 50 or 100 top accounts, but making sure you're opportunistic in finding those openings. As far as identifying them, though, we're primarily using LinkedIn and Google News Alerts. I would say the top two that we're leveraging to find those openings.
Yep. And so you're using Google Alerts, using LinkedIn. You find any kind of hook, and you're basically saying that almost anything could be spun into a hook, and then you're having your people reach out kind of with the right message at the right time type thing.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah, kind of to that point too is even going back to things like if you're going to a public traded company, there's so much information out there about them. Like go out and find their 10Q or their 10K and say, what's your company initiatives, and sell down that way. Say, you wrote this is a problem for you, let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a huge one also is like based on funding. They have spend potentially, especially when you know who they're potentially going to be hiring, what they got their money for, and that's another trigger that we've definitely been using in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of sources out there. I mean, it's so openly available now. Especially LinkedIn is probably one of the best sources you can get for a lot of this free information. And people are just willingly updating it. They're changing jobs, they're changing roles, this, that, and the other thing. So Crunchbase, there's so many different free sources to go out and get this data from. Is anybody here? And I guess I'll start with you, Liz, and then we'll go Jaime and Phill. But is anybody using a Mechanical Turk or virtual assistant or kind of like outsourced help to maybe help clean the data, fill in the blanks, go out and do some of the research that's a little more manual, maybe that can't be automated? Are you seeing anything right now, or do you have a team in place?
Yeah, so I'm not outsourcing any of that through like a Mechanical Turk, but I do have teams in place in both the Philippines and interns in North America that are supporting my team to try to take some of that admin work away. Mm-hmm. And to your point, some of it's research, some of it's cleaning up lists, some of it's doing some deduping, some of it's enforcing the ROE. But yeah, we have teams that are working in support of that BDR group or the lead gen group and making sure that they can spend as much time as possible actually calling and working with leads.
Yeah, and you train them up, the ones in the Philippines, for example, you have somebody in-house train them, you put documentation together. What does that process look like?
Yeah, we have a data specialist team. So we have a team, I don't know, we're probably close to 10 people now that are doing this full time. And they have a manager and someone dedicated. And yeah, the training process for them is more focused on our internal processes, rules of engagement, and database. It's not a sales role, right? We're not asking these guys to call in. We're not asking them to make dials or really kind of do much research beyond firmographics and confirming that this is the right company for us to be calling into, and kind of cleaning up lists and building them for other people.
Yeah, I hear more and more companies in San Francisco that are really focused on this sales development and data role. They're hiring business analysts, and they're hiring these kind of data specialist teams strictly to go out and create total addressable market readings and spreadsheets, and then also to drill in deeply with some of this data and figure out where to kind of mine all this information using products that aren't even made for salespeople, like PitchBook and Mattermark and stuff like that to go out and figure out what companies to contact and kind of how to get in. So it's really interesting to see. I mean, obviously you're a much bigger company, and so you have a lot more resources, but it's really interesting to see that you've built something like that out.
It's funny you mentioned PitchBook. We actually have 2 people dedicated to that whose job is literally to review that on a daily basis and push it to other people.
Exactly, and most companies can't, they're not that big. So most companies can't spend $50K per license on PitchBook and then pay 10 people, but there are definitely things that you can do. I mean, I have a team in the Philippines that does a lot of lead research for us. There's 3 of them in the Philippines. It's not expensive at all. We can probably hire 5 or 6 of them for the price of one, full-time U.S. person. They all work 40, 50 hours a week. They're very smart. They're definitely capable of doing kind of anything that we can do online, and they have access to a lot of different free resources to do this stuff with. So you could do it if you're a small company. You can have them leveraging LinkedIn, Sales Navigator's a little on the pricier side, but it's not that expensive. And then Crunchbase is free. Google's free. I mean, there's a lot of free resources out there. So it's great to see that you're doing it in a big way. But even for smaller companies, I know they can do it as well. Jamie, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I mean, we have Amazon Turks doing some crowdsourcing and stuff. I mean, obviously there's as much, there's a lot of technology out there for getting firmographic data, getting the right contact data and everything like that, but there's still potentially a human element that can really take it to the next level. So we have some list scrubbers and that sort of thing, both in the Philippines and as well as a new team in Colombia, actually, to utilize for not only scrubbing data and lists and that sort of thing, but also just helping with kind of like the monotonous tasks of data entry inside of Salesforce. So some of our enterprise execs also have a VA who will potentially be on a call with them, update information, put a proposal together, and that sort of thing. There's just still a lot of tedious data entry that goes on in CRM, and we're outsourcing some of that as well.
Yeah, and we've gone, so we have a VA as well. We've actually used them. The only thing different than what Jamie said is we use them actually to build out lists. Let's say, hey, here's the list of core companies we want to have. We've gone on research. We think these companies are using CRM. We think they have this e-signature in place. Go find 3 contacts for me, specifically these titles. And I think that's the thing. As long as you give them good guidance, they're smart enough they're going to figure it out. And you got to kind of keep working through that. And it isn't time investment unless you have a team in place to help work through it. But it definitely it helps the amount of hours that you have in a week to work, for sure.
Yeah, it's an unfair advantage. Liz, I cut you off by accident. Were you going to say something at the end there?
Nope, we're good.
Okay.
We covered it.
All right, cool. So that's awesome. On to a next really important piece here. So Phill, let's start with you here, and then we'll go to Jamie and Liz. But who on charge of your team, like who on your team is in charge of overseeing this process? And I guess like what KPIs or goals or metrics are they being judged on as far as collecting and leveraging this data that they're finding? And maybe for your team, everybody is researching and reaching out. What do what does that look like on your team?
Yeah, because like we do that, the account approach of looking for strategic accounts, so it's a little bit different. I think the idea is we have that VA that can pull in leads and give us a bunch of information, and then once they have that in the system, the BDR can then take that information and build it out. So we actually start our process off with a mapping phone call. It's the first thing we do. We call in the account, we try to figure out who reports to who, and who really is the decision maker. Because part of the problem with today's data is about half of executives aren't actually on LinkedIn right now. So it stops if you don't know the information. You stop researching who the CRO is or the CMO is, so they have to go out and find who that person is, who the VP of sales reports to or the sales operations person reports to. Once you start figuring out that, then you know who to call into, and you can start finding out direct phone numbers, and you can start finding out confirmed email addresses, and then you start emailing and cold calling the account. So you have a good base of information. So there is a little bit of manual work that has to go into it on the BDR perspective, but at the same time, it saves them time in the back end of not having to go through and call the wrong person and confirm the information that they're calling against is accurate.
Cool. Jamie.
Yeah, so in terms of who manages the development team, for us, we're still a pretty small organization, so pretty lean sales leadership that still oversees it. We do have a director of sales ops that's really responsible for keeping them up on their KPIs, number of emails, number of phones. We actually have a metric of they have to create a certain amount of leads into the system, and so that's something that they're obviously that we're tracking. The number one thing is demos for us is regardless of how many emails they send, how many phone calls they make, how many leads they bring to the system, what are they actually producing and what demos are turning into opportunities. At the end of the day, that's really what's relevant for us.
Okay, so you track just the end, I guess, like the end metric there is like the whatever happened.
Well, we track all of it because, I mean, without tracking the number of phone calls they're making, the number of emails they're sending, the number of leads that they're bringing in, if someone's just dramatically underperforming, we're not going to be able to say why and keep them accountable. So it's definitely the foundation and then also the end result.
Okay. And Liz, I mean, gigantic team. What are you tracking?
So first, completely agree with Jamie. We track all the activity metrics, and we're looking at them more as a diagnostic tool, right? So figuring out if you're a person who's making a ton of dials and you're getting the connections, you're probably calling the right people, and then you're saying something wrong if those aren't converting, versus the person whose activity levels are really low across the board. So activity for us are more around the diagnostic side of things. We're certainly looking at the number of leads promoted, but I think one metric we look at that we really like actually is this concept of a hot list and who's kind of fresh and new in your queue, and making sure that they're adding new contacts and within a company and new companies, but making sure that that is recycling out every few weeks and that we're not just calling the same 50 contacts every week for the next 8. So we're measuring the changes in that.
Liz, do you have like an SLA around that? Sorry, Max, but do you have like a certain amount of time where they just kind of like get kicked out or they circle back around? Just kind of curious.
Sort of. I think it probably could be a little bit clearer. Right now we're letting them use a lot of judgment, and as this team grows, I think we're probably going to have to become stricter around that. But our goal would be to work a lead pretty aggressively for 20 to 22 business days, so about a month, and then retire it. And we have a queue of revisit leads, and so when something hasn't been touched in X number of days, it becomes what we call a Shark Tank lead, and so anybody can pull it back into the active queue.
So to touch on that too, so our KPIs, which I didn't mention before, so our KPIs are very similar to that. So we have to, it's more about conversation ratio, how many times you make a call to actually get on a conversation, and then actually conversation that turn into an appointment or an opportunity, whatever your metric is there. So you start looking to see how healthy you are in terms of actually just getting somebody on the phone. So not just throwing 400 leads or making 400 calls for just to make a dial. You're making a dial for a purpose. So you're picking up the phone and calling somebody for a reason. And then very similarly to what Liz was saying is we actually have every Sunday and every Thursday they have to drop a list into a campaign inside Salesforce, and then we work off that list. So there's constantly new leads in the system at all times. They manage it all on their own.
And so, coincidentally enough, we did have a question come in that was, when does too much research on a prospect become wasting time? And so I think there's 2 sides to that, which is one, the 22-day cadence that you guys have at NetSuite, and then the other side is, how much time do you spend actually doing the research, on a lead? When does that become kind of a time suck? Is there too much information to have on an individual or a contact?
Yeah, so it's a constant problem for us, especially when we're bringing on new reps. We end up with a lot of librarians that aren't making a ton of dials. And so early on, what we're trying to push is actually a Boresight BP. We use them as a top-of-the-funnel prospecting training, and one of their ring true items is this 3x3 research. Find 3 pieces of information in 3 minutes or less. Do I think that's really happening? No. 5 minutes would be great. Anybody exceeding 5 minutes researching a lead, you're not finding anything else, right? Read the company website, Google it, and move on.
Yeah. Great. Cool. We've covered a lot today. This is fantastic so far. So We got a couple more questions rolling in here, and I've got a couple more that we can get into on our own. So one interesting one is, I'd love to know if any of you have I guess, a favorite story about maybe how one of you or one of your reps used some kind of open data on the internet to open, facilitate, or even close a deal. Just kind of, something maybe out of the blue or something that somebody grabbed that, was really interesting and somehow you didn't think it was going to work or the long shot and maybe it, came through. And Jamie, you want to kick us off? Maybe you have a story and then we can go Liz and Phill.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my story would be more around, I think, a customer anecdote where they've actually found the social information and the direct dial of a CEO whose information wasn't very accessible, and they actually called the CEO. They didn't even know that it was his actual cell phone. The CEO picks up and said, "How did you get this number?" And then it turned out to close a pretty large opportunity. So that was just leveraging our capture technology, which actually is pretty good at finding social and sometimes cell and direct dials. So that was just one that kind of top of mind.
Cool. Yeah, those are always good.
Yeah.
It was fun. Getting in touch with the CEO directly. Yeah, you can, obviously for you, it's like, how'd you get this number? It's like, well, if you want to know, you can use it. Liz, what about you?
Yeah, so I think Phill stole my thunder earlier, but job descriptions have been a great one for us in figuring out what somebody is using today, and when they're seeking certain skills in the marketplace related to ERP or CRM, it's a great insight for us. We get a lot out of that. I'm trying to think of some other big wins related to data, but I would say often it's kind of doing the basics and doing it consistently and making something that's repeatable that we get a lot of leads out of versus kind of the one-hit wonder wins.
It's a numbers game, yeah.
Yeah, my favorite story. So I make a lot of dials with my team, so I'll sit next to them as they're dialing out, and usually I'll find information on that person as we're working through it. We were calling it. It was a large media company out of New York, and they couldn't find a direct number for the guy. I happened to find information on his wedding registration, which was still online. And was able to call him off that direct phone number. So it was just a unique way to find somebody's information.
Which is an interesting segue into a question we just got. How do you? What's the line? What's the line of violating their privacy, or not necessarily violating their privacy, but just making them feel violated because you know too much or present too much, or obviously it's not like, hey, saw you just went to the Disney World with your kids on Instagram, like not a trigger, that's not a trigger used in sales, right? So I guess where is that line? And as a rep, or even Liz, as somebody who has 150, how do you make sure that people aren't really crossing that line?
That's a good question.
It's a great question. I mean, we've towed that line a few times. I had a similar story, actually. I had someone who started, Facebook friended someone and then found a playlist that they made on Spotify because the woman was a DJ on the side and she was the admin to a CEO. And you get this whole story, and in the end, you're like, wow, it was just totally stalker-esque, but I guess you got the meeting. Mm-hmm. I don't have a good answer to that. It's funny, sitting on the other side as someone that's prospected all the time by vendors, the few things that I've found that really make me shut down is prospecting me on my cell phone through text. Know me before you text me. I'm fine with you calling. I'll pick up my phone or not, but I find it invasive when somebody is actually texting me before we've had a conversation. You're smiling, Max. I feel like you've told people to do that.
I don't know if I've ever told somebody to do text messages or anything like that, but so we used to do some stuff at Udemy that I don't think we were violating. It was just it was a different sell. You were selling to individuals who had to create courses. It wasn't exactly selling to somebody who then had to sell their company on it. So that line was, I would say it's not a little blurrier, but it's definitely maybe moved a little bit because you were creating more of a personal connection and selling them on the emotional side and trusting you and kind of following you. There wasn't that sell to the individual, then the employee, then the company type thing. So we definitely pushed the boundaries on that a little bit more. And I'd say it worked more often than not. I'd say the most often people got felt violated or pissed off was when we had when we double emailed someone, or like didn't take them off the list after they said they wanted to be
I
taken off the
think,
list.
yeah, I think there's so many ways to reach out to people today that aren't violation, right? Like, assuming you can get, public information like public Twitter handles, and there's LinkedIn. There's so many actual ways that are just generally acceptable. It seems like that text to the cell phone, yeah, it's like seems so unnecessary. There's so many different ways to gain access to people today.
Yeah, and honestly, like I tell the SDRs that we have here at TinderBox, just be honest. Like, don't just tell them, hey, I got your information. I have your cell phone number, but I'm going to be respectful of you. Can I get 5 minutes of your time? And honestly, that works most time because it earns that level of trust that you need to take that next step, which is theirs, is to get somebody an opportunity to sell to them. So if you're just honest and upfront, like, I got your information, maybe I'll even tell you where I found it. It's on your wedding registration. You want to take that down? Let's talk. So
Yeah. I'd say, I've hit some people up before on their Gmail, and they've been like, how'd you find my information? I was like, well, if you want to know, let's get on the phone, like let's take a call, So I think that works. I mean, if you can get clever with it, and you're a little bit slick, like you can kind of spin it. But yeah, there's definitely a line, and I think most people that you hire, again, that might begin at the hiring process. Like if you hire the wrong person and they don't understand like the social, impact that they're having on people, like their social awareness, maybe that's where the problem starts. But which also leads us into another good question here is, do you ever see data and technology replacing sales reps in the future, or do you think this will just empower reps more to be, continually more efficient? And I'd say this is really mainly on and this wasn't in the question, but mainly on like the SDR side of things, because obviously you'll probably always need somebody to talk to the customer. But on the SDR side of things, do you think that we'll get to a point where we can completely replace them with technology? And I'll go Phill, Jaime, Liz on this one.
So probably not. I think there's a human element that has to be accurate. Do I think that we can get better at finding information? Yes. But finding things, looking at it, hey, Jaime, I know Overboard's probably saying that I know you have a child on your way and I'm going to call you and talk about that. That's not going to work. So if that's what they're able to pull in with technology, it's not going to be good. So I think there's got to be a certain amount of reasoning that goes into it, saying this is okay, this is not okay to talk about, and this is okay information to have in our CRM system. So probably not. I think we can get really close, but never completely replace people for it.
Yeah, I think that definitely you can cut down the amount of necessary people, right? So just think about if you start off with a finite metric of the amount of dials that you need to make, if you have a dialer, you're going to be able to do a lot more than if you're doing that manually. So potentially you would need 2 reps instead of 4. But there's always going to need to be people running the tools. What's great about it is we're continuously building and increasing tools, the efficiency with technology, and that's really, I think, what's where we've come in the last couple of years is pretty amazing in terms of empowering the reps to do their job better.
I might add to that and say I think the size of deal, and whether it's transactional, strategic, enterprise,
that's definitely
size and type of sale and type of product might matter too.
Yeah.
I could see there absolutely being a time where you create more of a self-service model at the lower end of the market. Yeah,
definitely.
Interesting. And then, on that end, knowing that there is kind of that human element still there, how often do you test, kind of the cadence? I mean, what works best for your team? I mean, there are companies out there that are tracking your dials and your connections and your email click-throughs and everything like that. So first part is, what do you see working better right now, phone or email? And then what does the actual cadence look like? And, can you share maybe some numbers or metrics on what you look for in, maybe it's open rates, click-through rates, connections made, et cetera, et cetera. Liz, you want to start us off with that?
Sure, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So I guess I would let's start by saying I have sort of limited technology in place to be able to track a lot of what's happening. So I actually am in the process of buying a new phone system. So right now when I report the number of dials made and the number of connects, it's all self-reported. I trust my team. I think I'm getting mostly accurate info, but I'd love to know that that's true, right? Be able to confirm it. So I think some part of this is buying the right technology and making sure you have it in place, and I'm hoping by like January of next year I'm ready to go on that. You know, from an email phone standpoint, I would say I'm looking for probably about 70% like phone calls to 30% emails. We still want more dials, and the reason for that is we convert more when we're on the phone with someone. So I'm fine with using emails and in-mails. They absolutely have a place. I think in-mails are like a secret weapon still. But I need to get on the phone to actually build the rapport and convert to a meeting. I'm not going to generate enough interest over email to get a real meeting. And what I find is that the meetings I do set over email convert at a much lower rate than the meetings that are scheduled on the phone. People show up less frequently, and the actual conversion rate of them to deals is lower.
You're going to be getting a couple phone calls today now that you just said you're a buyer of phone technology. Is anybody from inside sales listening?
I selected one. I should say that.
There you go. Okay. All right. Cool. Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think in terms of email versus phone, it really depends on the data, right? So if it's completely cold, depending on the contacts that you have, you might be better off actually getting them on the phone because it's so random and there's so much potential spam with just general outbound. In terms of metrics, open rates hopefully can be up to like 60%, and then click through potentially down like 15 to 25 is typically what we're seeing. But again, getting back to the differences, typically we just run a cadence with a dialer, and then you can send an email out on top of that. And typically the combination yields better results. In terms of actually tracking A/B like testing types of things, honestly we've tried, we just haven't gotten a lot of, I think, like buy-in to really going two completely separate routes to really see which one is working better than the other.
Hey, Jamie, quick question on that. So I've been reading a ton recently about that concept of a double tap, right? And I feel like it's suddenly got this negative connotation where I've been like preaching it for the last 3 years of like, I think I respond and am much more likely to when I get that name twice.
Mm-hmm.
You guys still are doing it? You get your BDRs to follow that model?
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll do like a blast out from the individual BDR, and then we'll use that same list through a dialer. So it's not like you send one email, then you make the call, you send another email, then you make a call. We think that would be a little bit, it just would be a little bit less efficient.
And the email goes first before the call.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we pull the data against both of it, and I don't think there's one that's preference to start with. So we actually start with an email though. And we actually send the email out late at night, so we send it after everybody's probably asleep, and we schedule it to go out with hopefully a specific email. And what usually happens is you open it up, first thing you get up in the morning, you wake up, look at your phone, and you see, hey, I got an email from TinderBox that morning, and then we call them that afternoon. So you catch it, you're like, all right, I got this, I'll respond when I get to work, and then we call you, just happen to call you that afternoon after you open your email, and we talk to you about it. That's worked really well for us. So. Cool.
Like sometimes we'll target specific accounts and not an email like the 5 key decision makers, but only call a couple of them, because at the end of the day they're probably going to be like communicating anyway. So it actually takes it back to kind of the beginning of the call. When you get that first inbound person, you want to potentially just blanket the organization so at least they're top of mind, because when someone's coming in and they're looking at like 3 different competitors, the person who told them to go look at a data quality provider potentially might not even know who those vendors are. So if you can get top of mind with everyone, not necessarily even interact with them like via phone, it can help close the deal at the end, and they can say, okay, yeah, these people actually reached out, I read that ebook, and just kind of quicken the sale.
Yeah, and I think that's something too. Most inbounds come in, you're only going to get that one person that's vetting solutions. You got to go higher. You have to call into that C-suite or that VP level to get to them.
Awesome. Well, we have not that much time left. Actually, we got to probably get going here, but there's a ton of questions that came in. We'll try and get to them. We'll put them into a doc. and then we'll see if we can get answers for everyone, put it into an article, and share it with the webinar recording. And I think this was great. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, Jaime, Phill, and Liz for getting on the panel and sharing this information with us. Again, you can follow us along at SalesHackerConf on Twitter, and we'll have more information for you if you're on our list about the webinar recording being posted later this week. But thanks again, and we'll see you next time. And thanks, guys.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, everyone.